All right, everybody, it's time to get started. So we appreciate everyone that's here. Obviously, you know the reason why we're here, and that is because Six Flags made a pretty major announcement, and that announcement I'm going to pull up on the screen now so you guys can see it. So unless you've been living under a rock today, you kind of know what we're going to be talking about here, but this directly affects you as Kings Island fans. So Six Flags today announced that their 2026. This is unprecedented for seasonal parks, but they announced their 2026 plans, and that involves Carowinds with a record-breaking water ride, Canada's Wonderland with a record-breaking water ride. Kings Island will introduce a new family thrill attraction, which we will discuss today. Not Soak City with a water park refresh. Magic Mountain, first of its kind roller coaster. Great America will celebrate its 50th anniversary, debuting a new kids area, commemorative event, and park enhancements. Great Adventure will unveil a record-breaking launch coaster. Six Flags Over Texas will unveil a record-breaking dive coaster, and Six Flags Mexico will introduce a new family thrill boomerang. So, Don, I see you're in here. I want to start with you, and then we'll go to everybody's thoughts. 2026, from a PR standpoint, kind of unprecedented, right? Don, you are muted. I cannot hear you. Oh, now there we go. So unprecedented 2026. That's 18 months from now.
Yeah, you normally don't go that far down the line with your announcements. You don't want to jump seasons ahead like that because then everybody can forget about what's coming up in 2025. You look at what the parks that they listed out. There's a lot of fans of some of the Six Flags parks asking, "What about us?" because they weren't listed.
Right.
So there's a lot of things about this that, as a PR person, I don't like. But there are some reasons why I can see why they did that.
Yeah. My guess would be that the reason why they're doing this is because their analysts think that the Wall Street investors are afraid that they're not going to be investing in the parks, and this is a way for them to do that. So,
I agree with you.
By the way, I want to pause this before this gets out of hand. So we got a question from Andrea. She asked, "Is the hat and sunglasses a hint?" Don, let's get this out of the way. Why are you wearing sunglasses?
It is not a hint. Number one, I just love the hat. Ryan
Tacoma hat. Yeah,
these hats a couple years ago. We were at IAPA and we visited the booth and picked it up. But no, the sunglasses, because right now I've had a series of different surgeries and laser procedures on my left eye, and it's very sensitive to light. And combination of the hat and the sunglasses helps me be able to look at the screen without my eye hurting. So for right now, this is the look. But we'll get back, pretty soon to where I won't have the hat and I won't have the glasses. Won't be able to see very well, but we'll get back to the normal look. But no hint. So don't take it as a hint.
No, it's we're not saying it's Vekoma. We're not saying it's going to be a very bright attraction. But let's take our first question, and eventually I'm going to turn it over to everybody for their thoughts. But Ben Roberts, who is a member, so thank you for being a member, Ben. He says, "What's the definition of a family thrill attraction?" And I think that is the question of the day, Ben.
Covers a lot of ground, Ben. There's sometimes, there have been times where it's a roller coaster and, they tease it as a new attraction coming or a new family attraction. And there's other times an attraction can mean a flat ride. It can mean something in the water park. It can mean a number of different things. So that's a term that gives you it covers a lot of ground with that term attraction.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to drop this in from Jason Cooper. He said the earnings report said investors were surprised that the legacy Six Flags parks were not invested to a level that the Cedar Fair parks were in recent years. Yeah, I mean, this is basically the same direction that I thought that they believe that Wall Street is afraid that they won't be investing in their parks, and Wall Street apparently knows maybe even better than Salim Basoul that the continued investment is critical We've had Dennis Spiegel, the owner of International Theme Park Services, on and talking about how important it is to have cyclical new rides and attractions, keeping your name out there. And this probably maybe 2025 from their standpoint internally, like maybe this isn't the perfect description of what we're doing, but 2025 coupled with 2026 might be. I think they said $1 billion over those 2 years. That's pretty incredible.
A lot of money.
It is. So David Hildebrandt, he said, I'm surprised they're investing so much so soon after the merger. Lots of money being thrown around. We're talking about a bigger company. So that's double the revenue, but double the expenses. You know?
Yep. And, you can keep piling on more debt by borrowing more. So there's always that plan too. I mean, we've seen that happen several times through the years, with the legacy Six Flags parks where they just, keep borrowing and adding on to the debt. And, but eventually, that is a lot of money. And eventually, those bills, those notes, they come due. So hopefully what they're putting in performs and they get a return on those investments.
Yeah, hopefully. But I do want to officially turn this over into the people that are chatting with us. I want to hear your thoughts as to what you think this family thrill attraction is going to be. My first thought was it was going to be a family coaster, but I think a lot of people have pointed out that they put coaster in the description of a lot of these different parks. I think Six Flags Over Texas with a dive coaster, original thing. I think if this was a family thrill coaster, that's what they would have said. So I'm almost leaning against it being a coaster in 2026.
Maybe not. Maybe it's a way to throw people off. Everybody talking about the Vortex spot, who knows? But I'm starting to think that maybe it won't be a roller coaster. The more that I look into it and the more people that I chatted with today, don't think that's necessarily going to be a coaster going into the Vortex spot for 2026. In fact, probably not that spot for 2026. So, but like Ryan said, we're interested to hear what you think is going to happen.
Sure. So channel member Bthrx, BTHRX, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Thank you for being a member. And he said, Gravity Family Coaster would be cool, but the language really does make me think it won't be a coaster, which I'm on board with you. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a coaster, but I'm not leaning that direction based on the language alone.
No, and they just put in a family, coaster with Snoopy Soapbox Racers. So do you come back that quick with another one? That's more family oriented. Although something like Big Bear Mountain would fit that family thrill attraction.
Yeah, that was my best hope when they announced this, was like, because Big Bear Mountain, if you've ridden it at Dollywood, is a fantastic ride. I'd love to have something like that, but I feel like if it was going to be a multi-launch family coaster, I feel like they would have been more in depth, because I feel like they could have said more without giving away the entire farm. While if it's some sort of flat or dark ride or something, then I think that it's a lot
family thrill to me means more than just your typical flat ride. When you're thinking flat ride, you're thinking Antique Autos, Monster Scrambler, those type of teacups, those kind of thing, Cargo Loca that they have there. You're thinking those type of rides for when you're talking those family flat rides, and I wouldn't put the word thrill next to those.
Yeah. So here's one that's been floated, I've seen online. Orangey Glad you asked the question. He said, Boo Blasters removal, hopefully. We need a more updated ride in that building. Yeah, absolutely. But is that a family thrill ride?
It can become one if you do it right.
But the thing, though, is I don't think it's going to be simply a dark ride if it's a family thrill ride. I honestly think if it was going to be a dark ride, that's what they would have said in the release. So it is narrowing a little bit to say that it's a family thrill ride, but the Boo Blasters thing is certainly on the table. And then there's one up here that I wanted to bring up. So Coaster Team, friend of the show, thank you for watching. I'm hoping for a Vekoma Madhouse or a new flat ride. I've had the Madhouse thing tossed around quite a bit of people thinking that might be it, like in the Crypt building.
Yeah, we talked about that a few months ago.
Yeah, I was secretly trying to find find your theory, but if you look back, we have an episode called possible crypt replacement, in which Don came up with this. Was it on your blog,
Yeah,
themeparksbydon.com?
Theme Parks by Don blog. Yeah, it was a Madhouse by Vekoma, but themed to the DC characters, and they've got the license for that. They're going to want to incorporate that when and where they can, right? So I came up with the story idea that that's what the crypt building could be transformed into very easily, actually. Um, some thought you're out of your mind. They're not going to put DC in Rivertown because it would be a disconnect, and others would thought, hey, that's not a bad idea, but then they had other things they'd want to see it, themed to in that. So Madhouse, I don't know, not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I agree. And then we've got we're unbiased here. So the Rickler says, "I'll fight to keep Boo Blasters." Buddy, I think it's going to be 1 versus 100 in that situation, because I think pretty much everybody else is ready to move on from Boo Blasters. Although I will
Everybody
admit,
wants to love Boo Blasters. They really do, but you just can't, right?
yeah, and if you've ridden the other Boo Blasters at the other Legacy Cedar Fair parks, they all are better. Like
Yeah.
they shoot out lasers. They go through different. They're more of a traditional dark ride rather
Carowinds
than
has a
Omni
great one.
Mover.
Yeah, I love Carowinds Boo Blasters.
Yeah. So we've got one that. So Joe Younger says, "Son of Congo Falls, mark it down." Is that going to be the world's first hyper shoot the shoot? Because I don't see how working very well.
Yeah, Son of Congo Falls. Yeah.
So James Sobzak, I hope you're pronouncing your name correctly, said Phantom Theater 2.0. If this were a year ago, I would probably be on board with that. But I feel like if they were going to do the Phantom Theater thing, riding out the the popularity from Phantom Theater Encore, they may have already done that already if they were going to do that. I hope you're right and I'm wrong, though.
I think becoming a Six Flags park and having that branding, I think that took the return of Phantom Theater off the table.
Yeah. Ben H said, "I know that theme park Brandon mentioned we might see this family thrill attraction in 2026, and maybe the next big coaster goes in the old Son of Beast plot of land for 2027. Now, to be clear, I've known Brandon for 25 years, and you know Brandon rather well. Brandon never claims to have inside information unless he explicitly claims that. So he might have speculated correctly about family thrill attraction for 2026, but why, if this is not going to be in the Vortex plot of land, which is the elephant in the room that a few people have put in the chat, but you and I haven't discussed yet, Don, why wouldn't they fulfill that before going over to the Son of like more area near?
I think they
Banshee?
would. I think they would be more inclined to fill the Vortex spot with a thrill. Either it's a coaster or a thrilling, family attraction, whatever. I think that would be a higher priority than going behind the scenes where Son of Beast was.
Yeah.
The topography over in that area would, it lended so you could do some things there, with it.
Mhm.
But I just don't see that being the area that they would focus on right now. I think there's a couple other places. I think even near the front of the park, I think they would focus on that a little bit. Maybe some addition by subtraction. If people know what rides I'm talking about there.
I wonder what rides you could be talking about in the front of the park that are adjacent to the parking lot. So now, in a perfect world, okay, let's say we have to do some addition through subtraction. To me, I've kind of made up my mind. So I know a lot of people have settled on we're probably going to get some sort of dive coaster in the Vortex plot, and that's pure speculation. I don't want that. I think dive coasters are kind of one-trick ponies. Changed my mind. But to me, I feel like a Big Bear Mountain style coaster in the Vortex plot, one that's very twisty and stuff, maybe in a little bit more thrill, like a little bit more Maverick than Big Bear. In that spot would be fantastic, or like some sort of Gerstlauer thing.
I agree with you there.
But if they had to do the front of the park, and they were gonna, let's just say what the speculation is in Vertigo, Congo, and maybe Timberwolf. If they're going to do that plot of land, that's where you get your launched wing coaster, because you can have some great visuals from outside of the park.
Yeah, you're going to need, if you're going to do especially one that might be on that, bordering a record breaking type of launch wing coaster,
mm-hmm.
You need a lot of room to, to get that launch off. And you don't really have that kind of space where the Vortex is to do that, to make that one a great
Mm-hmm.
launch coaster. I mean, a dive coaster could go in there. The Big Bear Mountain coaster could go in there. Something like Alpen Fury. that's going into Canada's Wonderland, could fit that spot very well. But if you want to do like a launch coaster, a wing coaster there, and a really good one, you'd have to go somewhere else, and I think that would be toward the front of the park.
Oh, there's no way that's going in the Vortex plot. No way.
No, you don't have enough room to zoom out. I mean, you just don't have enough runway there, the way that is. So,
okay. So check this out. Once again, channel member Beatrix, he said Phantom Theater like the new Dark Ride or Fire in the Hole. So if it was Fire in the Hole doesn't have the best animatronics on earth. Dollywood, for those of you who need to look it up, or Silver Dollar City, but it is like super charming. And if they were going to do that, I'd like to see them do it like Fire in the Hole, where there's a bunch of show scenes and then a few drops at the end, rather than something that twists and turns and there's some sort of show element at the end, like Mystic Timbers. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're right. You need several different showrooms to make that type of a ride, something that guests are going to do over and over again.
Yeah, and something to stand out. Mediocrity, when you're spending a lot of money, you can spend a little more and get a lot more out of it, or you can save that $5 million and you can be lost in the mix, and you can have the 46th ranked Giga Coaster as opposed to the 9th ranked Hyper Coaster. Brian Hauser, friend of the show, member of the show, turned Boo Blasters into a 3D interactive shooting ride, kind of like Toy Story Mania at Disney. I mean, I don't want to say that's the screen thing's a good idea, but I really do love Toy Story Midway Mania.
I do too.
I'm really good at it. I'm just saying.
I wouldn't mind that.
I wouldn't either. Lovebug 53, bring back concerts to Timberwolf. I do not believe that is a family thrill attraction, unless depending on the show that's in there.
Now, we've talked about that before. You need, somebody that's really dedicated and committed to doing that. You can't decide in April or May you want to do concerts that summer, because everybody that you would want to get is already booked, and then you get those acts that are just hanging on, like we saw before. You take what's available at that point in time. You'd have to have something like, if you wanted to do that, you need to be looking at 2026 right now in terms of booking those dates and that, if you want to do it right and have a really good concert series there. I like the idea of it. I think that's the venue's, nice. They did a lot of work to it. It's just one of those things that, it's like when you're going to jump into a pool, they just kind of stick their feet in the water. They don't jump all in. You have to jump in if you're going to do something like that and be committed to it for the long haul. You can't just try 3 or 4 concerts. Oh, it didn't work.
And that's what happened. They got a little lucky with some shows like Skillet. I did very well. Three Doors Down did very well, but I went to almost all the shows. I went to over half of them, and like Flock of Seagulls had a few thousand people.
That's the kind of acts I'm talking about that you're going to get if you decide in April or May you want to do it, for that coming season. That's the kind of acts you're going to get. But if you want to bring in some of the bigger name ones that are going to sell out the place, you got to be working on 2026 right now, and they don't have anybody doing that.
No, so I wouldn't hold my breath. I'm not saying that Timberwolf is certainly doomed. I think if there's the opportunity to put something there, that's what they're going to do. But if they're going to make a real go, because they can't afford to do what they did in 2022 again. They can't lose money on these concerts, or they can't run flat with putting resources into them.
No, but that year they waited until early spring to decide to do it. It was, should we do it? Should we not do it? We're going to do it. And by that time, it's too late. Everybody that you could have got's booked.
Yeah, I'm going to give 2 comments because I'm going to handle them both at once before we start getting too far behind. But Hey, I'm Chris said, I'm so bummed that it's not an RMC reimagined Son of Beast. And then Ben Roberts, channel member, KI needs Steel Vengeance. It's just saying. Do you think that there's a market for a big old RMC at Kings Island?
No,
I don't either.
I feel like RMCs have their fans. There's fans of those, those types of coasters, but the majority of the guests, Steel Vengeance isn't their favorite ride at Cedar Point, not even close. So I don't know. I mean, everybody, we need RMC. I don't think so. I think
that if Son of Beast were alive today in RMC, I take that back. If this were 5 years ago maybe 10 years ago. I'm messing up her timeline. If this were a while ago, because I don't think Cedar Fair is particularly fond of these big conversions with RMC after Steel Vengeance, because that's been kind of a disaster. But I think that if RMC had progressed more when they were making the decision about Son of Beast, that might have been the time to make a huge RMC and make a big splash and maybe salvage the Son of Beast name. But you and I discussed this on a show. I don't think that there's much equity in the name Son of Beast beyond the
No.
nostalgia stuff for a few people, because a lot of people, you got to remember that if you're going to bring a ride back, let's say, what's like Firehawk, if they were going to build a new flying coaster and they called it Firehawk, that would be okay, because nobody was ever really hurt on Firehawk. It had some maintenance issues, but it wasn't like that's the roughest ride on earth. But with Son of Beast, most people are like, that was too rough, or, I heard somebody died on it. Nobody died on it, by the way. I understand selling the t-shirts. I could not fathom them opening a new ride and calling it Steel Son of Beast or something like that.
I think, when it comes to Son of Beast, that name, bringing it back, anything like that. What's the name of that song from Wicked? Oh yeah, Let It Go.
That's not from Wicked. That's from Frozen.
Oh, Frozen. That's right. Frozen. I'm thinking of it because of Adina Menzel. I'm thinking.
I was wondering if that's where you.
Yeah. But anyway,
okay. That made this live stream.
I got that. No, I'm a big Wicked fan anyway. But I think that it's just time to let go. I mean, you're holding on to something that's not going to happen, and there's no good that can come out of it by the park resurrecting that name or something that relates to that ride. There's just no good that can come from that.
Yeah. F5 Roller, it's our old friend Gabriel. He said, I just read Pipeline Surf. I do think it would work at KI, but would be a much better layout. Pipeline was meh, but I do think KIGP would enjoy it. So I actually completely agree with you. I think that the potential is really there. But Don, you never got to ride Pipeline, right? At SeaWorld? No. So it's a stand-up, but it has a piston in it, so it goes up and down. So it's supposed to feel like waves. I don't really like the stand-up thing at all, including that. But to have that, so you're in a sitting position, and if you go over a hump, it feels like it's throwing you off the ride. I think there's huge potential in that. I'm disappointed that hasn't been further explored. But the layout, I think, was fine. I think it's the stand-up part that's kind of dumb for that. Plus, you're surfing and you're facing forward. I don't know any surfers that do that. Hey, I'm Chris. Is Velocicoaster considered a family ride? That depends on the family, I suppose.
You know what? I think if you had to put it in a category, I would put it in that.
It depends on how you define family, but yeah, I think there's an argument for that. I think that it's more family friendly than Steel Vengeance, Top Thrill 2.
Yeah, and a better ride. There, yeah. I
said it. Justin Pac-Man Xavier said, "Where can I get Tower Topics merch?" Well,
depends on what kind of merch you want. Right now, we have T-shirts and we have sweatshirts. Not just any sweatshirt, but a zip hoodie sweatshirt. So that's our merchandise line right now. But there will be a lot more in the weeks and months ahead. Ryan and I have kicked around several different, things that we want to do with it, all in due time.
Yeah. So watch the show. Send on an email, shoot us an X, let us know like your T-shirt size or whatever.
Yeah, but if there's some specific thing you're looking for, I mean, we can make it. We can get it, and make it for you. So just send an email and say, here's what I like, what would it cost, and we can do it. We'll get you the prototype.
Yeah. Brian Hauser, channel member, he said, with the events with Top Thrill 2 not running, could you see KI getting a Strata coaster? No. There's a non-zero chance that Kings Island's going to get a Strata coaster, but it's closer to 0 than 100. Much closer to 0. Jeffrey Koth, also channel member. If any ride gets removed, don't count on the park notifying before it happens, like Great Adventure removing 6 rides: King to Ka, Zumanjara Drop, Twister, Top Spin, Parachute Ride, and Sky Ride, and Green Lantern. Jeff, I know you're a member. We actually have some content. I'll drop that tonight where Don and I kind of discuss, because as of last night, we didn't know all this, well, at least about King to Ka for sure. And it was really disappointing. And thank God it leaked out, and the people that were really committed to the ride went and, got to ride it. But I think that's the decision of I can't fail. it had to have been the decision of the park or something. But I mean, Don, when you were there with the Vortex, you gave everybody like a 2-month run up to breaking their hearts
Yeah,
with
but
that.
there
You
was
know?
well, first King to Ka, I think the park, and I did reply to our friend Brandon today on his thing when he was asking what everybody was feeling this morning, and I said I think that the park handled that wrong. That they should have let fans of the ride know that it was going to be removed. Give people a chance to come get last rides. Give them a 30-day, 6-week type notice. Even if it's 2 weeks, just give people notice that that's happening. They let the content creators, the YouTubers out there, kind of control the narrative on that. They sat back and said nothing. They didn't, deny it. They didn't confirm. They didn't do anything. And then, the announcement comes out today, and you see a number of people saying that, had they known, had they heard officially from the park, they would have gone. Now, that adds up, with the number of people that would have, bought tickets or bought food, whatever it might be when they went there. But I just think that, anytime that you're going to be, sneaky, secretive, non-transparent, from a PR end, I don't care what the brand is. Anytime you operate that way, it's never a good thing. You want to be transparent. You want to let people know if something's going away. You want to make sure you give enough time for that last chance. And when Vortex was going to be removed, there were some that like, let's not say anything till after the season. It's going to be a lot of negativity on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's going to be a lot more if you wait until after the season to let people know that that's, not coming back. And it would have been the same situation. You would have had, word would have got out internally about it, and it would have spread to, the guests and that, and you would have seen the same kind of things where people were, posting on social, Vortex is being removed. Come get your last rides. And then some would have bought into that. Some would have said, you're crazy. It's not going to happen. The park would have said something. But there were some that didn't want to do it. But the decision was made that, yes, we got to give everybody a chance because this ride, has been a favorite for a lot of guests. It's meant a lot, over the years. It was part of Kings Island's, the history with the record breaking. When it came out, it was historic. There was a lot of reasons to let everybody know to get those last rides, and it was the right thing to do to let everybody know. There was still some sadness in that, but I think being transparent was the way to go, and I really think that Six Flags should have been transparent with King Ka. They knew what was going to happen. There was no reason to wait until this morning to announce that. You could have done that, 2-3 weeks ago, a month ago, and just let people know. I mean, it's the results are saying the ride's going away, right?
Right.
So why not just be transparent with your guest? And they weren't.
Yeah, and it's funny because for those of you who are members, I think the episode is just up now for tomorrow. You can actually watch it as soon as we're done with this live stream. I'd encourage you to stick around for this, of course. But we talk about the calendar and how it could be affected. And this is all based off of things that we're hearing that are being thrown around, as well as stuff that was said on the quarterly conference call. And the conclusion that we kind of drew is, if they're going to change the calendar for the negative, if they tell people about it when they're buying their pass so they know what they're getting, I mean, people are going to complain, but it's not going to be like they're ripping people off. If they sell them a pass and then you're, of course, under the assumption that it's going to be similar to last season, you are ripping people off. I understand that the calendar is subject to change, and we're going to get park sycophants that defend them if they decide to go some of the routes that have been discussed. And if you're a channel member, you can watch that video now. If not, got to wait till tomorrow morning. But the transparency thing is huge. The park's got to do what they got to do. If they felt like removing these rides was the best, and honestly, it's going to be for the better, because they're probably going to do some sort of huge expansion here. I mean, that's what they're certainly implying. But these rides do mean a lot to a lot of people, and it would be nice to give those people the opportunity to ride.
And I certainly hope if Kings Island in the years to come decides to remove attractions, and that's going to come. It just it's part of the the everything life with the amusement theme park industry, that every ride eventually does come to an end. But I would certainly hope that they don't sit on it and then wait till after the season to let somebody know. I don't care if it's a ride like the the Monster, or it's Congo Falls in Vertigo, whatever it might be. I hope the park would be transparent and give everybody that 30-day notice, like they did with Vortex and Firehawk. Because it would make a big difference. You're going to get the negativity either way. You're going to get more of it if you don't say anything.
Yeah. Next channel member, MGM Adventures, he said, Don't see the Boo Blaster's replacement as Family Thrill, leaning heavily to the Crypt replacement, likely a Madhouse, but would also like a Dance Macabre style that was just open at Efflington. Yeah, I wouldn't be mad about a Madhouse. I mean, the thing though is a Madhouse
And there's
is
not a
unique.
lot of those around, right? So I mean, it would be
Mm.
something that you don't have one up the street, 4 hours away at Cedar Point, or 5 hours away, 6 hours away, a Carowinds to Kings Dominion. It's not something that you're going to get everywhere you go, if you have the all park passport. So I think it would add some value to have something that's unique to Kings Island.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because anytime that there's any kind of announcement, there's always like a what about me-ism to it, where people are like, well, if they're adding a Giga coaster, well, okay, they're adding a family thrill coaster. We got a fair amount of people that are like, when are we going to get a thrill coaster? If they add a thrill coaster, it's like, well, I can't ride this with my kids. But I think that part of the issue why people are always reserved when it comes to Kings Island is it seems like they, in a lot of cases, it's like they promise you a 6 and you get a 6.0001. While maybe at Cedar Point, it's kind of like they present you with a 6 and it's actually like a 6.995, and I'm talking about, like Orion, which, it wasn't said, but it was implied that it was going to be the next big thing, Giga Coaster. It was not. It's a great ride, but it's shorter than all the others and shorter in length and height and everything. And then, our water coaster is 150 feet long or something, it's like
A little
little.
over 500 feet, but
Yeah.
but you look at what some of these other parks are getting. They're getting these record-breaking water attractions in 2026, and
Yeah.
you have parks within 3 hours of Kings Island that have not one, not two, but three water coasters that are among the best in the world. And they're all 1,700 feet, long, and you're putting in one that's a little over 500 feet. So, uh, when you put something in, it's going to be, I guess, mediocre at best compared to what you could have done with that. You're going to have a little backlash. You're going to have a little disappointment with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And part of that is, let's be honest here. It's easy to kind of defend the park and say they put in like what makes sense for them, from a budget standpoint, or you blame the guests. You guys will come anyway, so why would they put in anything good? The truth is that management makes the decision as to what to put in, and if they don't fight for anything better, they're going to get the
Yeah,
minimum
they didn't
viable
fight for
product.
anything. You're right. In that area, they didn't fight for anything more. If they said, well, that's the budget we had. If you look what's coming in 2026, looks like there's money out there that you could have gone the extra, 1,000, 1,200 feet, and made something that's really good out in Soak City. It's a nice addition to Soak City. And there's been a lot of nice additions to Kings Island. But there was a time, that they were cutting edge, and they always wanted to be the best of the best. And that's not happening anymore. There's not that mindset there. But Kings Island is now, is always going to be about families. And when you look at some of the rides they put in over the years, the Beast, the height requirement worked for families. Vortex, it worked for families. So for the most part, the things they have put in over the years, that they were, it's notable, and that they were, industry leading, or on the technology side, all those kind of things. It still had the families in mind in a lot of ways, but they still pushed the envelope for what was available at that time to do those things.
Yeah. And much has changed. But Gary Willis said, "Is a Madhouse still a thing? Been at least 4 or 5 years since they built one." I actually queued this up. It's still on Vacoma's website, so it is
Yeah,
a
it's still a
product that is
thing.
in
I
their
mean,
inventory.
when Banshee was introduced at the press conference in 2013, I mean, how many years had it been since there had been the steel inverted coasters like that? When was the last time one had been put in? It had been years.
Mhm.
So if it's still available, you can still do that.
Yeah, I don't think it would be a problem getting one. And plus, it's kind of a simple device. My concern would be that when it comes to a Madhouse, you can have this immersive, really cool experience that really makes a difference. Or for like $2 million less, you can have a spinning vortex that people sit in. And my fear is that they would go with the spinning vortex that people just kind of sit in because, well, it's more family friendly that way, and it saved us $2 million. I have very little faith in the willingness to open up their pocketbook to create the best possible guest experience because they feel as though they can get away with something slightly cheaper. This is a good one for you, Don. So Alexander Stigl said, also, is there a reason why KI or any of the SFEC parks haven't done any in-park announcements in the last couple of years? It doesn't cost much for it, or is it a budget cut?
Not a budget cut. It depends on who's leading the PR and if they want to put the effort in to do that. I was always a believer in making your guest part of that announcement. I mean, that's what you're doing it for, your guest. So for me, when I got there, I felt it was important to announce Diamondback at the park where guests could be in attendance. It was same thing when Banshee was announced. That was against tradition by doing it at night, but it worked. Electric atmosphere. The same thing when the park announced the water attractions at Soak City. It was still open. Guests could go into Soak City and see what was being announced. And the same thing with Orion. It was still done. It was a nighttime announcement. That was the last one that was done pretty much in park. It just seems, for some, it's just easier just to send out the press release, and just wait for the follow-up phone calls or something from the media than, putting together this event for your guest. I think that last year, what they were doing, with Camp Snoopy, that would have warranted an in-park type of an announcement.
Right.
Sometimes with the operating calendar now that they've shortened it in August, sometimes you wait until you're not open and it's the middle of the week. But you could have done that a couple weeks earlier and announced it. Mystic Timbers was another one that was done, in park in 2016, and guests love it, and you get a lot of that, with the content creators, on YouTube and everybody posting on social media. They're posting the pictures, talking about what's happening and all that, and it just gets the ball rolling. You get off to a great start, with the announcement of it, and momentum builds, and then throughout the season with the construction and all that. I just think it's a lot better than just sending out a news release and okay, well, we got the hits on the 4 local TV stations. That's good. We're great. We're done. You got to put the guests first. That would be me. If I was still in a PR role, I would want to do it in park because it's, again, it's for the guest.
Well, speaking of which, JFix694 said, Don, please return to PR. I'll personally purchase you 100 pub burgers.
No, I think, my PR stuff is now on a, freelance consulting basis. I do a little bit of that with some people, but no, I think there's a better chance Son of Beast would return in its original form than there would be of me going back into PR at Kings Island.
So you're saying there's a chance?
No, I think it's, I like what I'm doing now with Ryan on Tower Topics. I don't think you'll see me return to any kind of a PR role at Kings Island anytime soon, or any other park on what I would call a full-time basis. Now, the consultant type thing, or an advisory. I would use the word advisory. I've done some advisory type things with some parks, and I think that's something I would continue to do, and I kind of like that role.
Channel member FYE Coasters, who stayed home with a fever today, I might add, so I hope you're feeling better, Josh. He said, hey, good evening. I'm excited about the announcements. What all did I miss? Well, Josh, we were just talking about you the whole time before you came. So for those of you who don't know, FYE Coasters, check them out on Facebook. They've got a very robust Facebook where they cover industry news, primarily focusing on Kings Island and Cedar Point. So hope you're feeling better, Josh. Here's a good general one. Isaac Miller. What do you think the 2026 family thrill ride might be? Could it be a roller coaster or just a little flat ride or something?
It's not going to be a little flat ride. I don't
think they would have made the cut for that release if they said if it was a little flat ride. And I also am leaning against the coaster because for a bunch of the other parks, they meant, in fact, for Six Flags Over Texas, they mentioned that it was a dive coaster. So like I said, my first thought when coming into this, before I got to read into it a little bit thicker, was maybe it's like a Big Bear Mountain situation. But I'm pretty sure they would have said multi-family, multi-launch coaster if that was the situation. Hey, I'm Chris. Followed up with, I honestly don't know how they just threw out this paper and said, "Here's what all the parks are getting." It's unconventional. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, that far in advance it is. It's not something like you hit at the beginning of the show here tonight, Ryan, why they would do something like that, just to show that there is investment in these legacy Six Flags parks. I think that was part of the plan with it. But to me, it's a you're getting a lot of I guess at some of these parks they're going to skip 2025 because they're let's just wait until 2026 to buy our pass now.
It's a terrible strategy, but like I said at the top of the show, and this is like a completely like unmitigated guess, speculation, but I believe that their business analysts think that Wall Street is afraid that they're not investing enough in the parks, and this is their way of allaying those apprehensions.
Yeah, you do a lot of things now where the customer is Wall Street. It's not me and you, Ryan. It's not the people that are watching this podcast. It's Wall Street. That's who gets catered to, and that's why they do a lot of things that they're doing now.
Yeah, I want to welcome our newest channel member, SportsSim 2022. He just became a YouTube channel member. So for those of you who don't know, there's a link in the description if you want to become a member. It's the best way to support the show. You get early access to our episodes, exclusive content. We're going to do live streams just like this, but only for members, where we talk about the real nitty-gritty stuff. And for certain tiers, you get free stuff. So that's all I'm going to say about this right now. But thank you so much, SportsSim 2022, for supporting the show.
You forgot one of the perks is going to be there's going to be a day you're going to get to have breakfast with Ryan.
That's like breakfast with Santa, though. It may not be me. It could be like a guy that works for me that wears a Ryan wig and a Ryan mask. Okay, moving on. John Hounshell. He said, "Do you think KI will use Cavern of Terror Haunted House to make room for a ride? What do you think will replace the Vortex and when?" So if you just hopped on, we're kind of discussing the idea of a Vekoma Madhouse. So Google that. Actually, I'll just pull it up.
Yeah, I think that I do think that the Vortex spot will, it's eventually going to get filled. It just doesn't look like right now it's 2026 if we're talking about a major, thrill type coaster, something that's either going to break records or, send you through multiple inversions in that. We've talked about the Alpine Fury ride at Canada's Wonderland getting, being something that would work in that spot, something like a Big Bear Mountain in that spot. But it doesn't look like the way that's described using the word attraction in this release. It doesn't look like that would be a coaster going to that spot for 2026. I think if it's not a coaster going in that spot, I think that's not going to be a good thing either, because that's what everyone's expectations. We've talked about it, Ryan, many times on our podcast, that whatever goes in there, and the longer they wait to fill that spot, it has to be something that, it's as good or better than the Vortex was.
Yeah, it would be a huge disappointment if they put something else in that spot. But honestly, we've kind of discussed this whole thing where with the Vortex replacement, if I had to choose between getting like a family coaster in 2026 that's like cheap but cheerful, or waiting until 2027, 2028 and getting something that's like remarkable, I'd rather just wait. Because remember, like, if you're not happy with Orion, if you were really hoping for Millennium Force or Fury 325 and you got Orion, it's not like you can wait it out and you're getting another Giga coaster. That's the one you got, and that's the one you're going to have for 40 years. So the poor decisions that go into some of these additions are ones that affect you for the long run.
Yeah, Ryan, I just got a text message from someone. They said, "Hey, you're talking about the crypt there. I'll fly my drone over just to see if they're doing any clearing."
Well, I don't know if they'll be clearing, but the rumor that I'm hearing from a bunch of people is that they're going to be clearing the stuff out of it. So
I think that's what they mean here. They'd be clearing out the building and that. But first of all, Ryan and I do not indoors. Somebody taking a drone and flying over the park, trying to figure out what's going on and all those kind of things. Uh, I don't know. I've always been against that without the park's permission. Now, if the park says you can do it, by all means, but just taking it upon yourself to go check it out. Never been a fan of that.
Yeah. Tim K. I don't think they've picked yet. There'll be active shoppers at IAPA next week for 2026. I respectfully disagree. I think that if it's a major attraction, which I believe this will be, they have to sign papers next week at IAPA. They can't be shopping at IAPA. This isn't like a little Zamperla ride that you buy off the shelf or something. Allegedly, if it's a madhouse or really most types of coasters or any kind of attraction that requires theming, there's no time to waste. And if you don't believe me, look at Adventure Port and why that opened late is because they waited
they've already committed whatever it's going to cost to add this attraction. They've already committed that, so they kind of have an idea what it's already going to be.
Yeah, I think that they know 90%. I mean, they might be tweaking the theme or like other thematic elements or maybe sizes or scale, but I think that they know exactly what it's going to be. So channel member Ben Roberts said, no dive coaster. Valraven was a disappointment after I got off. I like Valraven, but I like it in terms of I'm glad that our neighbors to the north have it. I don't want a dive coaster. I'm sure like dive coasters are fun and all, but if you could ride it every day, I feel like it would get old really quickly.
Yeah, I like my favorite dive coaster is SheiKra.
Is it really?
Busch Gardens, Tampa. Yeah, that's my favorite dive coaster. I don't mind them. It's not going to be something that, when I go to Cedar Point, it's not number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on my list of what I definitely have to do. I think I look at those as complimentary rides.
They're cheap and cheerful, which unfortunately is often the direction. Jason Cooper said, what about Six Flags selling KI to Herschend? We have a whole episode that I linked to. And if you look at like our community tab, I actually linked to it yesterday saying, will Kings Island always be a Six Flags park? And Herschend is one that, because if they're going to pick off some of the parks, which they disclosed in their quarterly call that that's possible, Kings Island wouldn't be at the top of the list to sell. But if they're trying to, send off your Darien Lakes and your Michigan's Adventures and stuff like that, they're going to have to throw something in the pot to sweeten it. That's where Kings Island may come into play. I know as late as 2014 that Herschend inquired about purchasing Kings Island. That's way after the merger of Paramount and Cedar Fair. They're definitely interested. The problem we may run into is that if Herschend picks up Kings Island, Michigan's Adventure, Valley Fair, and Great Escape for $1.5 billion or something, the Herschend's going to look way different a year later. They're either going to be public or they're going to be debt-ridden or something. So they may operate a lot more like our friends over there in Charlotte than they do our friends in Atlanta.
I think they're great operators. Ryan, you and I have talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
You go to any of their properties and you don't feel like you're just a 20-digit number on the back of a season pass.
Yeah.
That you feel valued, welcome. They want you there. Everybody, that, from the time that you come through the turnstiles, parking lot, to the rides, to the food service, it doesn't matter who's working. Everybody, buys in and wants to deliver that, best day of the year experience. And so there would be a lot to like if that were to happen down the road.
Yeah. I do want to get some of these. So we talked about this on the show, Corey. We have a whole episode dedicated to it. But Don Houndshell said thoughts about Racer being open for Winterfest. I'm gonna give you the floor, Don. Racer's your thing.
I think it's a great addition. Adding a couple of more rides, you got that, and Snoopy Soapbox Racers. Takes some more of the guests, especially on those, the Saturdays and the Sundays. Take some of them off the midways. I think. Coney Mall, you always saw the Racer with the tracer lights and that. I mean, it always looked really good. But I think, having it open, it fits. If you can have Mystic Timbers open, the Racer could always operate during Winterfest. But the reason that it didn't was there was always that concern about, being able to get the 4 trains stripped down and rebuilt in time for the start of the season, in April. And that's going to be pushing it. It's going to be 2-train operation, one on each side. So 2 of the trains will at least, get a jump start on it. But between when you had the 3 beast trains, the 4 racer trains, you had the 2 on, Woodstock Express. That was 4.5 months, 5 months of work to turn that around and have those ready, the start of the season. It was pushing it. It'd be the beginning of, end of March, beginning of April, when they would have those 4 trains, back over at the racer and ready to start, doing some test cycles and that. So I wouldn't be surprised if the trade-off is you open the season in the first week or 2 in April, it's 2-train operation.
Which I don't think would be the end of the world. You're adding a whole new attraction to Winterfest.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but I could see that, unless you hire, several more, maintenance workers, and you don't have more space in that building, so you can only do so much at the same time. But unless they have more, hire, 2 or 3 more people, and they work overnight in that, that's a tough ask for the maintenance team to be able to turn those trains around. But I'm excited about it. I think, it adds, more to Winterfest to have a ride like that open. It's another reason to come. So, yeah.
Totally. I want to thank our next newest member, JFix694. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. You guys have no idea how much we appreciate this and how flattered we are. I kind of envisioned between 5 and 10. I'm mind blown how many people think that our content is worthy of supporting in this way. So thank you so much for being a member.
Yeah, and this allows us to do other things too, to really expand what we're doing with Tower Topics when you become a member.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Craig Mead, friend of the show. Diamond Black blows Orion out of the water. I wish I had a poll option with the software. I want to hear in the comments, Diamondback or Orion, which one do you like? I'm not going to be able to count them up because you guys are going to blow me up, but I'd love to hear which one do you think is a better ride. Let's go first. I'm going to say Diamondback. I think Diamondback is twice as good as Orion. What do you think, Don?
Diamondback, just the overall experience is better. There's a lot more airtime. You really don't notice the difference in speed. The height, it's almost 70 feet shorter, but in terms of the height, but when you're up that high, you don't really pay attention to notice that much either. I think the first drop is excellent on Diamondback. I like that it has the different hills on it. The layout I think is better. So yeah, for me, it's Diamondback. Not even close.
Yeah. I just want to give a shout out here. Brandon Stevenson said, "Sup, Ryan." Brandon is the world's biggest Universal Studios fan, and he is chatting with us and watching us from Universal Orlando right now. So, Brandon, I hope you're having a great time.
Love Universal Orlando.
Oh, yeah. Eastern Coaster Guys, he said, "How long do you believe it will be before Kings Island realizes they need more than just investing in family orientation and catering to everyone at Kings Island?"
I think they do cater to, pretty much everyone. I don't know. I mean, as big of a coaster enthusiast as I am, I'm also realistic, and I understand that when you look at, day-to-day attendance, that the percentage of people that are, the enthusiasts just there for the biggest thrills, very small. So I think they know their audience. They know, who buys the tickets, who buys the passes. It's mom that buys the passes a lot of times. There's always the thrill seekers who want to see the, Kings Island to do something like a Steel Vengeance or, really push the envelope with some of the thrill rides. And I'd love to see that too. That's never been really the audience for Kings Island. And the years that they've done new additions in the kids area or the water park, those have always been more of a driver than a Diamondback and Orion. A Mystic Timbers, though, on the other hand, did very well because Mystic Timbers was one of those rides that was geared toward families, and it was marketed that way.
And it brought appeal too. So it brought appeal too. So somebody that's a 24-year-old coaster enthusiast will travel from Missouri to ride Mystic Timbers. But
Right.
that's what's a little concerning. When it comes to things like Snoopy Soapbox Racers, I'm sure it did very well, but it probably did very well locally because that's just not something that you pull out of market for.
No,
Do you agree?
But Yeah, but Mystic Timbers did better than Orion did. Even though Orion was, the giga coaster that the park, had been waiting for, the guests had been waiting for, in terms of, getting that return on the investment. And, it's something that guests wanted to come back and experience, time and time again. Mystic Timbers, was the better ride. So you can build something. When they talk about family attractions, that's thrilling. I mean, Mystic Timbers fits that bill. So you can do a lot of rides along that line. I think the park would sell more tickets and more passes than they would if they put something in that was 400 feet tall.
Oh yeah, yeah. I agree. And I think there's a threshold too. So if Top Thrill Drag, because I think Top Thrill Dragster, in terms of crowd pleasers and stuff like that, performed extraordinarily well for Cedar Point. Other issues offset that. I understand that, but they built it as the tallest, the fastest first strata coaster, and I think that worked because I think that people came from far and wide to ride that. Now, if they decided to build it at Kings Island and it was going to be 350 feet tall and go 80 miles an hour, so it's just a blip on the radar, I think that that would be, $25 million or $30 million completely wasted.
Yeah.
Because I think that's, you get a lot of people, and it's funny because you get the people that are either park sycophants or um want to be all high and mighty on their own supply, but they're like, and when someone's like, we're getting another water slide, like when are we going to get a coaster? And then you get that person on KI Central or Reddit or whatever that's like, well, coaster enthusiasts are only 0.00001% of the audience. Well, I understand that, but define a coaster enthusiast, because I know of 7 parks that found it financially viable to build 300-foot coasters, 2 that was viable to build 400-foot coasters. There's a market for it,
There is.
so clearly it's not a matter of if they build a giga coaster, it's only for, the ACE members that go to the spring conference. There's a much broader appeal. So when people say that they want a coaster, or there's like that what about meism to it, I think that that's completely valid, because again, you put in a family ride and people are like, where's our coaster? You put in a coaster and people are like, well, my kids can't ride that. So granted, I obviously the data supports the idea that there's a broader appeal for the family stuff, but there's a reason why parks put in your Banshees, your Orions, uh, your Millennium Forces, your Steel Vengeance, because there is a market for that, and it's not just people that carry Ace cards. Ugh.
Right. I think what you want, though, I mean, ideally, some of the ones that are always it's coaster or bust. You never see them riding the Scrambler, the Carousel, the Monster, Kings Mills Antique Autos. You never see them on any of those kind of rides. They're just there to ride the roller coasters. That's the group that is the very small percentage. But the ones that will go and ride, any kind of a record-breaking coaster, and that you also see them riding everything else in the park. That's what you want. You want that guest that's all about everything at the park, not just one particular type of ride.
Channel member Aaron Parsons, thank you for being a member, by the way, says, give me something like Velocicoaster. Well, Aaron, I'll go halfsies with you on that. I'm going to be riding Velocicoaster again in about 3 weeks. I'm a Universal AP holder, along with Brandon Stevenson, who just left a comment. And man, what a great ride! I mean, come on, that modern Intamin stuff is so good.
It's an excellent ride. Would love to see something like that at Kings Island.
Sure. So this is a good comment and a great username. So the wide weird world of Frankenberry, which is probably a pretty wide weird world. He said, "I'm telling you guys, Phantom Theater Intamin dynamic motion stage, for Tomb Raider. I think almost the first pick 6 we ever did on the Attractions Group podcast was talking about when they unveiled the dynamic motion stage. You sit on it and it can like rock and stuff. I cannot tell you how many eggs I would put in the basket of doing something cool like that in the Tomb Raider building."
Yeah, real quick on Phantom Theater, as the years go by, there's fewer and fewer people involved at Kings Island or in Charlotte that number one, experience that ride. Number two, understand what it meant for the guests and how well they liked it and everything. So the further you get removed from that and have fewer people that were around when Phantom Theater was there, the less likely something like that would return.
Yeah. Andrew Stigall said, is it an unpopular take that I want KI to get a B&M Hyper or a Giga Top Dive on the Vortex plat? I like to see KI be the next park to have the B&M Grand Slam. I know you just talked about it, but still, well, they have a B&M Hyper like right next door to that, so I don't think they're getting a B&M Hyper. Now, I did kind of poo on the dive coaster idea, but if they're going to do a Giga Dive, I'm willing to hear what you have to say. But my fear is that we would get, a B plus thing that's like Iron Menace, where yeah, it's a dive coaster, but Cedar Point's got a better one, and it's a one trick pony. I don't want to see that. I think that's
I like
kind
something a little more thrilling myself. I mean, I think if you're looking for a complimentary type ride, love the dive coasters, but I would want something that's a little more thrilling, or maybe something that nobody else has.
yeah. Our good friend Alex BH Trump said, I wonder if they'll ever consider building a resort on site and making KI more of a destination. I mean, they blew that when they sold the land for Great Wolf, but
They had that, and that's what it at one time. I mean, it was considered a destination place, and you had the accommodations across the street. I would love to see them, build something. You have room on the property. You could, if you remove Timberwolf, there you go. You could put something there. But I would love to see that. And by the way, Alex started following me on X. I just noticed that today. It only took him 15 years since I've been on X. But thanks for the follow, Alex.
he created a new account. You were his first follower, and I was his second follower. I don't follow X close enough, except for posting on behalf of. I mean, you and I both run the Tower Topics X, but my personal X, I just used to retweet Tower Topics stuff or whatever. But he had to text me to let me know. But welcome back to the X game. I first said KI would be an amazing park under Herschel. Unfortunately, it's too much of a cash cow. I mean, I don't see the logic there. The problem is that Kings Island is so incredibly valuable that for a private company like Herschel to come in and buy it would stretch their finances to the extreme. And
I like when people always say it's such a cash cow. Maybe it's not the cash cow that you think it is. I mean, it does well, but it's not, like a bottomless pit of money just rolling in there.
but it could be if Herschel owned it. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying it's not. Everybody says they'd never get rid of it. It's a cash cow. It does well, but it's not one of those. It's not making money hand over fist. Not many of the parks in the industry do.
No, and honestly, it's there's something to be said about the type of revenue that Kings Island brings. I've always said, and I say this half jokingly, but it really kind of is the fact. Between the months of August and December, they're begging you to buy their season pass. Between January and July, you're a burden on them because you're just a season pass holder and they don't spend any money. I always have that in mind when I make my decisions when it comes to the park, by the way. But to me, that front-loaded revenue in late Q3 and Q4 is incredibly valuable to their balance sheet. And it's guaranteed revenue. They're not going to have the per capita spending that Cedar Point does, or I'm trying to think of like destination parks, like maybe Magic Mountain, probably the New Jersey one to an extent. But they do have guaranteed revenue, and that's realized over time as you visit the park. And the spending isn't necessarily there, but it's people that are too wrapped up in metrics are the ones that don't see the forest through the trees with this stuff, because there's a reason why the meal plans cost what they do. And that's because they figured out that regardless of how many meals people in general, like I'm assuming there's several 100,000 season pass holders. So let's say 100,000 have the meal plan. Overall, they make more money selling them meal plans than they would with the individual meals. Food costs aren't all that huge. They're an expense, but it's not crazy. The labor's a little bit, but they also have the infrastructure for it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot to be realized. That the problem with Kings Island, as Alex Trump brought up, is there's no hotel. If they had their own hotel that was wholly owned by Six Flags, kind of like Breakers, that would completely change the attitude towards the park. But the question is, could Kings Island support it though? It went from being, we talked about this in one of the members exclusives about how Kings Island is now kind of a local park rather than a regional park. And it's because they haven't been able to have the reach with the PR. They have the additions have been very locally concentrated. They haven't really made a splash and since Orion to any extent. So if they build a 150 room resort, are they
you have to
only
get
going to
outside your backyard, with the word and everything, and we know that hasn't happened, in recent years there, that it's been, pretty much, like you said, catered to the local market. You're basically marketing to the season pass holders. You're not getting those single day tickets from, West Virginia and Pennsylvania, Michigan that you used to get. There was a reason you used to get it, and there's a reason why you don't now. But I do think, when people talk about it being a cash cow, they would be surprised at how little of every dollar the park actually sees after all the expenses are backed out. And it's not much, I can tell you that. So, that's why too, Ryan and I talk about, you might have the dining plan, but when you go, sometimes, open your wallet and still buy, funnel cake or buy something, that merchandise or just something to, you know, just give the park a little bit of money there, because it's there's not a great as big a margin as people would think.
No, and I've always been under the understanding that for the most part, at least seasonal theme parks run a pretty thin margin compared to a lot of its peers as far as entertainment is concerned, mainly because they're seasonal in nature. Remember, most of the parks lose money for half the year. They lose a lot of money. Listen to their Q1 conference call, and you'll hear how much money that they lose.
Right.
And if they reported positive, it's because they're realizing revenue from season pass sales, which they could realize at any quarters. That they're choosing not to say that they lost money in Q1. But to your point, Don, I've got three different thoughts with this. The first one is to play devil's advocate. The park does not necessarily always look out for your best interest. You're a customer of theirs, so you don't necessarily have to feel obligated to spend money. Like, I know that that's not what you meant, but
no, I don't mean you have to feel obligated, but I mean it helps, down the road.
Right. But my second thought is, you're not having the full experience if you don't spend money every once in a while. The best thing that Kings Island can do for itself, and it does a pretty good job, is give you opportunities to spend money. And we're talking about like special treats for tricks and treats, maybe like upcharge stuff to do. International restaurants, a good example, like New Year's Eve, stuff like that. I'll gladly shell out money, even though I'm eating a meal that I could get for free at La Rosa's with the meal plan. But that's because I'm paying for an experience, an augmentation. So right. I think that you're cheating yourself if you say, yeah, I got the meal plan, I'm not spending any more money. But the other thing is, if you support what they're doing, then consider it under that regard too. Again, it's a business, not a charity. But, and somebody said this on KI Central, and if you're in here, drop a comment, because I think that you said the most true possible thing. And we're talking about the lanterns with Haunt. And, you and I made a big deal about the bubble wands during Winterfest, made a big deal about the lanterns during Haunt. And they were like $40. They were kind of expensive, but, I bought it just because I wanted to try something new. And it was somebody on KIC made a good point. They're like, I normally wouldn't spend money on this, but I think it's cool that they're innovating, and I want to be supportive of that. So just remember that. But let's it looks like what most people are agreeing on Diamondback rather than that. So I'm going to take one last comment. This is kind of a nice one. I'll take it from a member, but Jacob Fix said, absolutely love the podcast. I drive a truck for a living, and most early mornings, it's only your guys' voices and other truckers. Well, you're a member, so you get a little bit of extra content. So I'm glad that we can help you with that.
Appreciate that you listen to the podcast, and anytime that you have any things that you would like to see us talk about on the podcast, just drop us a note. Either send us a direct message through our X, which is Tower_Topics. Leave a note or message on YouTube here, or you can just send an email to me at donhelbig@themeparksbydon.com, and any kind of topics in that you think would be of interest that you'd like to see us cover in the weeks and months ahead. We take everything under consideration, and Ryan and I have back and forth discussions on different things we should talk about. Sometimes it makes itself, there's opportunities that happen or announcements happen, and that kind of sets it up for that week. But we're always open to our ideas from our audience there, because as we always say on every show, it's a podcast by Kings Island fans, but it's for Kings Island fans.
Absolutely. And then one last plug for all the members out there. Thank you guys so much for supporting this show. YouTube is free. The software that we use is very expensive. We pay for the software for what you're looking at now, as well as the editing software and the stuff for hosting the podcast stuff. It's very expensive. So you guys make all that possible. If you want to become a member, there's 3 different tiers. There's a link in the description. The Silver Pass will get you exclusive content. We're going to do live streams just like this, but just for members, and early access to the videos. You go up to Gold. After 12 months of membership, you get a free t-shirt, and you also get your name on the screen. You'll see that. And then Platinum's our highest member. You get a t-shirt after 2 months of consecutive membership, and then you get a verbal shout out on the show. So if you're able to support the show, we greatly appreciate that. If not, we appreciate you just watching. That's no problem. But we got to wrap this up, guys. There's been a ton of you in here. I get, you guys never cease to flatter me. I have no idea why you care what we have to say, but you apparently do. All right.
I think, Ryan, part of it is because, we're one of them. I mean, we're fans of the park just like they are.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody that came around and hung out with us tonight. Hopefully 2026 is going to be a great year with a cool new family thrill ride. We'll do this again when we find out more. Episode tomorrow morning talking about possible changes to Kings Island's operating calendar. If you're already a member, you can watch it right now. If you're not a member, it drops at 5 a.m. tomorrow, like all the other episodes. Good night, everybody.